So Harry Kane spoke today to Faye Carruthers, the England correspondent at Talk Sport in the UK from the England camp, and he was asked by her about the situation, of course, over the summer. It's the first time he's spoken. He said, "I know there was a lot of noise surrounding me," he said, "but I was quite calm. I knew what the situation was between me and the club, and that's the way it will stay." When asked if he fears the transfer saga has tarnished his reputation, Kane added, "No, I don't think so. I think anyone involved in the football industry knows the ins and outs. When you're in it and you know the truth, your conscience is clear." Let's take you back to London, to David Ornstein, our Premier League insider. So, what happened with Harry Kane, David?
Where to begin, Rebecca? Let's take this back to the end of last season when Harry Kane made pretty clear his desire to go. In fact, he always thought he was going to go this summer because he believed, Rebecca, that he had a verbal agreement with Daniel Levy, the Tottenham chairman, that he could go if a respectable offer arrived. But you don't do verbal agreements with Daniel Levy. And you could say that that was misguided by his representatives, who are his family, his father and his brother. There have been agents involved in the past, but they essentially oversaw the signing of a new 6-year contract in 2018 with no release clause. And that was absolutely crucial because it meant Daniel Levy didn't need to accept anything. There was a suggestion here that he might have wanted 150, 160 million pounds, but he never said that. Sources have told me that if he was ever going to consider selling Harry Kane, it would be to an overseas club. If it had been to an English club, it would be more towards £200 million. Manchester City were prepared to go big for him. They would have paid a maximum, in my understanding, of £100 million plus around £20–25 million in add-ons. But negotiations never opened because that was not tempting enough for Daniel Levy. Now, Manchester City's plan was to bring in Harry Kane first and then Jack Grealish, and the Grealish deal would have required somebody to leave the club. However, Grealish's advisors managed to get that deal snuck in straight after the Euros before Kane had even got anywhere near getting off the ground. And that meant not only would they need to go big for Kane, but they would need to get rid of a player as well. And as the deadline loomed, it just sort of slipped out of sight for Manchester City. Tottenham were completely relaxed. Daniel Levy had all the power. He held the aces. And ultimately, it was a deal that just wasn't meant to be. Now, we can mull over this as much as we want, but one of the key things, as my understanding, is that Manchester City made pretty clear to Harry Kane that this is your summer. It's now that you need to get the move. Go to Daniel Levy and find some sort of agreement, and then we'll come in with the money. They won't be back in 2022, is my understanding. Harry Kane has, in the last few weeks, we've reported, rejected a new contract approach from Tottenham. He may still have his sights on a big move when there's more teams at the table in 2022, but he'll be 29 years old. He'll have 2 years left on his contract. Then, if he scores goals, he'll be confident. The Spurs fans have welcomed him back in. They're already singing his name.
David, thank you. Goodness me, fascinating stuff. Robbie Musk, I'll come to you in just a second, but there could be some movement out of Spurs. Reports are that Spurs and Serge Aurier, the fullback, are in talks over mutual termination of his contract. That has just come into us here. As you know, anything that comes in, we will let you know over the course of the next couple of hours. You feel bad for Harry Kane, don't you?
I do. I think he's been let down by his advisors, agents, whatever you want to call them. I think he's been let down by Daniel Levy. Great information from David there. All the kind of the facts that we all know about. Just quickly, he signed a long-term contract to protect the football club, Spurs, that when he did go, they'd get all the money that they could get for him. So that part he did for them. I think when you think of... there was talk about him going for the last 2 years, by the way. And then I remember we talked about it on the set here about, well, I think he's going to stay for the stadium. He stayed through the new stadium. And then there was talk about him going. And then, well, no, Jose Mourinho's a new manager. I'll stay through him. So he's done these things. And then he said, you know what, if we're not challenging for the title or in the Champions League, then, and this was the agreement comes in, then I think, you know, reasonable offer, as David said, I can go. Reasonable offer. So this is the last part of it. So everything else has kind of been, he's ticked the boxes to do this. Reasonable offer. So, as David said, 120 million, I'd say is a reasonable offer. Lukaku, similar player, similar age, similar numbers, less money. I didn't see anybody else wanting to pay 120 million for Harry Kane, so it was a fair offer. And still, Daniel Levy said, no, you're not going anywhere. I feel bad for Harry Kane. Listen, he might go in January. I doubt it. It's a shame, Rebecca, because a top-class player is probably not going to go on and win the titles that his talent deserves. And I feel bad. And listen, it wasn't handled well. And the clause, of course, was overrides everything I've just said. I still feel bad for him.
Rob?
I don't feel bad for him, which is juxtaposition for us two usually. He wants data and fact. The data and fact. I'll go down the road that Robbie Mustoe's gone. My biggest player, my best player, my England captain, signs a 6-year contract that secures him as well as us. That
didn't need to be secured.
That I don't want to sell. I don't want to sell him. This doesn't get a buyout clause. And we have a conversation that I say, well, if somebody comes in, Harry, well, we'll talk about it. He runs off and says, I've got a gentleman's agreement. It's an interpretation of what is a gentleman's agreement. Harry Kane is at fault for not doing his contract properly. If he does his contract properly like Jack Grealish, he gets his move. And if every big club comes in and flexes financial muscle and goes, here's some money, discounted for a player who's my England captain, who's a 3 times Golden Boot winner.
He's not discounted. Nobody else has come in for him.
How do you know what
Nobody else has come in for him.
How do you know what I want for him? I want 150 and you've offered me 120.
Only City are prepared to pay 120. Nobody else is knocking his door. So it was a fair price.
His contract's not up and I don't want to sell him and I want 150 million. You offer me 120. Do I have to take 120?
Was it not that the whole club had kind of had the opinion that it's probably the right for him to move on? The fans accepted it. Everybody accepted it's probably the right for him to move on. It's like great players, Rob, moved on in the past. Great players don't stay at one club's...
And they do their business properly. There'll be young Spurs fans who've got Harry Kane on the back who will be saying, when he's left, why's he gone, Dad? Because Man City want him and they got bigger pockets and so he goes. No, that isn't how football works, Rob.
OK, well, he's not gone. He's staying this summer anyway, for now. So now what? I mean, now what for the future, Tim?
Well, I don't know. Musty, you make a great point. Look, I will say this. I've never backed out of a gentleman's agreement in my life.
No.
But he signed a contract, and then by signing that contract, you leave everything up to Daniel Levy. Simple as that. So... But I also agree with you. What happens to him? Like, he's a depreciating asset. He'll be a year older next year.
It was a big price.
And I look at that, and I just think he may not get to a bigger club unless they're willing to pay a massive fee, or he's a make-weight at some point in a couple of years for a top club, and he doesn't play every.
Don't you feel
the biggest and best players get the biggest and best agents, and they get.
We agree on that.
Cristiano
his advisors let him
moved
down
at 36 years of age. Yes. Harry Kane has got to look himself in the face.
But don't you feel bad for him in any way, a little bit?
Of course, I feel bad for him that he's not playing for those things. But I also feel that Spurs and Daniel Levy has a job to do for Tottenham Hotspur, and he's done that job.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch highlights all season long and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend at 7 a.m. Eastern. And for even more content, head over to Peacock, where we've got live games, original series and a dedicated round-the-clock Premier League channel featuring studio shows, classic matches and much more.